26 minutes to 12. We told you about an hour ago, Judy Moran has been convicted of the murder of her brother-in-law, Des Moran. Now, back on March 2007, 4 years ago, I spoke to Judy Moran, and this is a telling part of the interview. You can't really, you'd ask yourself, is she just lying or is she in denial about her family?
Neil, my family has been wrenched away from me. What about all the other families? I have a little...
But no, look, Judy Moran, you're talking about families. How many families have been destroyed by drugs that your family was involved in dealing?
Well, not to my knowledge, Neil, and we have had this talk before.
Yes, I know.
I'm 62 years of age. You have met me. Do I look like a person that's drug-affected in any way?
No, but your husband, Lewis, and Jason were not killed because they had the wrong colour eyes. They were killed because there was a drug war going on, and they were part of it. I understand that it's hurtful to you because you've lost people close to you, regardless of what those people were like. But, to talk about families suffering, there are families suffering through this whole thing.
My very word there are. And, Neil, if I could just say this, please, I feel very sorry for all the families who have lost their sons to these serial murderers. It's not just myself. I feel very sorry for all the other mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters that have lost their sons to these evil vermin.
Okay, it's Judy Moran in 2007. Well, she's now, I guess, convicted of vermin, convicted of murder. Andrew Rule is co-author of the Underbelly books and with the Herald Sun. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Okay, is she... is this confirmation of what we've really always known about Judy Moran, that she's right in the thick of it?
I think it is. I think she's... Shakespeare said, she protests us too much. She's always pretended that she was some sort of clean-cut, slightly racy grandmother figure. In court, she put on the demeanour of a retired school teacher, which was in stark contrast, I understand, to the taped conversations that the police had with her and her co-conspirators, in which she was not like a retired school teacher.
What is her history? If you go right back...
Well, she's an interesting one. Neil, you'd remember many years ago in a previous lifetime when you were a sports editor at The Age, the young sports reporters would call the leg men at the VFL clubs. The leg man at Carlton was Leo Brooks. Leo Brooks was a very funny, colourful, knockabout bloke. He was part of the furniture at Carlton. He had a big terrace house in, I think, Drummond Street. And interstate players, many of them prominent people now, such as Mike Fitzpatrick and many, many others, used to stay at his house. He would board the interstate guys.
Yeah.
He is Judy's father. And the little kids that used to kick footies around with all those stars of the 70s were the two Moran boys, her boys.
Good grief. Okay, so she lost... Did she have other sons, or did she lost both? They're only children?
I understand the two sons, and they're both gone. Of course, different fathers. Mark's father was a gunman called Les Cole, who was shot dead in Sydney in about 82. And then Jason, who's undoubtedly, his father was Lewis Moran, because there was a very distinct resemblance.
There's always been the argument, hasn't there, that Judy Moran, despite her protestations, had to know what was going on because she was effectively living off the drugs.
No doubt about it, as long as the money kept rolling. And here's a person who she would roll up at court and to some extent to funerals dressed in boutique clothing. She would give sort of thank yous to her hairdresser, and her nails, the person who did her nails and all the rest of it, was done up like a sore toe, like a sort of a B-grade retired movie actor. But the reality of the misery and the horror of it all was caught by a press photograph taken the day that her baby son, her younger son, Jason, was shot dead in 2003. And there's this most gruelling photograph of her just sitting beside the oval where her son was shot on a piece of pine fencing, just howling her eyes out. And she looked like the wreck of the Hesperus. She looked awful. And that's the reality. Deep down, she was a mother who had lost two sons, a former husband, but of course, it didn't stop her later on from plotting to kill the only living male relative of those of her boys.
So really, I really wonder. You see her going into court, waving and sitting in her wheelchair, and you hear the stories about her in jail, and you really wonder whether people like that understood the value of life and death. For a woman to go through a situation losing both sons, who say her ex-husband, and still be putting on this this front, I thought was extraordinary. I mean, is it just a different level of morality, is it?
It seems to be. You'd think there's a sort of a self-imposed split personality. You would think, and you do see it in a lot of people who live in that world, particularly women who seem to really have to turn a blind eye to the fact that the men in their lives are violent thugs who basically make an obscene living through their willingness to injure or kill others. Essentially, that's what they're willing to do.
And as you say, she's been convicted of plotting to kill, of organising the killing of Des Moran, her brother-in-law.
Yep.
Why?
In the end, it comes down to money and arguments over money, as in many families. If you've ever been through, a will situation, a lot of families will argue and fight over money. She believed that Tuppence had access to a large amount of money that her former husband Lewis would have left, and she demanded a certain amount. And I think for some years she was paid a monthly stipend. He stopped paying. I think they had a nasty argument where he hit her, and I think it deteriorated from there.
And that was drug money, presumably?
Oh, well, that's basically what Lewis did. These were old-time crooks. They were crooks for generations, but of course they graduated from the old-fashioned stuff like pickpocketing and knocking off meat at the abattoirs and the odd safe job. They graduated into running drugs because it's just so much more lucrative.
Andrew, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Neil.
Andrew Rule, co-author of the Underbelly books, and now senior writer with the Herald Sun.